Good evening, everyone. I'm really excited to talk about women in higher education. And so that I don't repeat many of the things that other people have said, I've tried to look at some overarching themes that have appeared. Um, First of all, I know that women are continuing a fight in higher education, even though the focus has shifted. And I think that education was one of the means that women used to fight for equality and for equal rights. But it wasn't the only thing, it wasn't completely by itself. And maybe during the colonial period it was. Women really wanted to learn, and that was what they were after. But I think in modern women, we find that as an avenue that I want the right to a quality education. I want the right to vote. I want the right to go into the workplace. I want to be paid equally. So education begins not to be a separate issue, but in my opinion, a sort of metaphor for equality, because the only hope for true equality for any minority is through education. Another overarching theme, I think, is I didn't realize that men weren't particularly afraid that women would become powerful and knowledgeable and hope for things beyond their realm. I don't think that really occurred to men. I think that men wanted women to be educated in their household duties and to be able to run the family business, which I found really intriguing because I didn't realize so many women were involved in that and kind of empowered in that way. But they didn't really need higher education. They needed to know how to do the things that were their duties around the house and with the staff, and that's what they learned. And they didn't necessarily learn that in higher education. Another thing I think is that women used a lot of subtle ways to make a point or to get a foot in the door. And it kind of made me laugh that Abigail Adams wrote the letter to John saying, gosh, if we want our women, if we want our daughters to do well, they have to be educated. And there are so many people trying to keep that away from women, but I know you're not one of those because you would want our daughters to be educated. And thanks, Abigail, for doing that for the rest of us. I think also the argument that women would be better prepared to raise their sons probably took some foothold because, again, very subtly, they took the focus away from women in higher education and put it back on men in higher education. Someone has to teach the children, and gosh, women are best equipped for that. Somebody has to be the nurse, and let women be the nurses so that the men can be the doctors. So there were ways that women worked their way in. And again, same thing in business. The women can type the letters and make the coffee, let the men do the real business. But what we found is once you open that door, it can't be closed. If there was any question that I had about higher education today, it would be what subtle ways do we find women still fighting that fight in higher education. I have a couple of friends who are in atypical roles, and they've both said during graduate school they were really kind of pushed aside and minimalized for their contributions within the department, and both of them have ended up teaching, so I think that's appropriate. I think another thing is that many of the young women that I work with today don't even consider gender to be a factor. It doesn't occur to them not to apply for pharmacy school because they're female, or that they can't get into engineering school because they're female. They may think they're not smart enough or they don't have the money, but gender really is not a factor with them. And for that, I'm really grateful to our foremothers and to women who made that argument, sometimes at great peril and great risk. So those women, like our founding fathers, fought a different battle and fought it more subtly, but they did fight for our freedom and our equality and opportunity. So I'm looking forward to hearing what everybody else has to say, because as I said, I think this might be my favorite week so far this semester. I've been waiting to find out the role of women. So I'll see you guys on the board. Thanks.